Welcome to Extracurricular. I am your co-host, Eddie Geller.
And I am your other co-host, Stephanie Vanos, Orange County School Board member. But here I am today, as I am always, completely unofficially.
What district do you represent?
I represent District 6.
What happens in District 6?
It's where everything clicks. Wouldn't you agree?
I would believe. I don't exactly know what that means, but it sounds good.
It's difficult to rhyme with 6.
Yeah. Sticks.
True.
Chicks.
True.
Stevie Nicks.
True. You can come up with something catchy with those. I'm down for it.
Does Stevie Nicks live in District 6?
I don't think she does.
That's too bad.
I heard she's in Tampa, though, for a concert.
I've been hearing that, too. We also have a third guest, which is the rain outside. So if you hear some rain hitting, the windows, we apologize, but we cannot control the weather at this point.
Pitter patter.
Pitter patter. Thank you for listening to Extracurricular. If this is your first time here, do consider subscribing. Do consider rating us. Steph, what can they rate us?
5 stars only.
5 stars only. We are so happy to have you. It's been a long weekend, but we are excited to close it out because we're always happy to be potting together. Check us out also on Instagram, extracurricular_podcast. You can email us, podcast@extracurricular@gmail.com. Steph, where can they email you personally?
Is that a real question?
Do you want to give out your personal phone number and people can text you?
I think it's actually better for them, and they will get a quicker response if they text the podcast or if they email the podcast. So we'll stick with that because I want quick responses for the people.
We love quick responses for the people. We had a great interview this week. We got someone on the pod that we've wanted to have for a while. Who did you talk to, Steph?
I talked to school board member in Hillsborough County in her second term, Jessica Vaughn.
So I used to live in Hillsborough County up until relatively recently. So met Jessica when I was running for office back in 2022. Jessica was so kind to me. One of the early supporters, this is actually, I met her in 2021. One of the early supporters who had seen my launch video and just was, introducing me to people and just I found it very comforting, and I really appreciated someone who was, school board member, established, and being like, hey, let's support this guy. And so I appreciate her on that level. But the two of you had a really great conversation about a lot of the school board issues that we've been talking about.
We did. And I will say also about Jessica, when I became a member of the Orange County School Board, she was super welcoming to me too. And you don't always, that just doesn't always happen across county or sometimes even within county. But she was very welcoming and just always, you're just excited that I was on the board, and just a wonderful person to talk through issues with, as they arise, as they do in Florida. So I was really excited to be able to sit down and talk with her.
You two talked about some very serious issues, but which, please listen to the interview, you'll get to them. A lot of some familiar stuff, but I think Jessica, is been on the school board for a bit and has some experience and can kind of speak sort of with a bigger breadth of experience than, folks who maybe just got elected.
Like me?
I wasn't going to name names. But and so there was a lot of serious stuff. But one thing I actually really took from your conversation with Jessica is there are more of us than there are of them in terms of folks who want a working school system, functional public education in the state. And there's many powerful forces who are trying to privatize, trying to make money off of education. And those forces are doing their damnedest at the moment. But there's a lot of people who care about what we care about here on this podcast. And I think so. I was actually kind of heartened by your conversation with Jessica.
Right. And we were both actually together at the Florida School Board Association conference this past week. And, it is a good reminder. And Florida has school boards that are very, certainly not all belonging to the same political party. They are very, I would say, divided politically. But I would say for the most part, they really are people who care about public education and making sure it gets funded and making sure that we're supporting our teachers and our students well. And so I think you're right in that sense. I do think you're right that there are more people who care about public education. And of course it's across party lines because, all political parties have children that go to public school. People across party lines care about public education. That was evident. That was evident this week at the conference.
And you two had a good rapport.
Yeah, I think so. She's great to talk to. She's easy. So thank you, Jessica.
I keep saying your interview with Jessica. I was not invited to the interview. Why was that?
Not true. You were very invited to the interview. You could not be on the interview at that time that we could do it. So would have loved to have had you there.
Okay.
You knew Jessica first.
That is maybe true. So maybe that's why it's that much more hurtful that I was not in the interview. How was doing your first solo interview?
Well, you were very kind to talk me through how to do the setup, which was great. But
hit record, which you did.
I much prefer to do interviews with you, but Jessica made it easy, and so it was fun.
Can I give you some notes?
Sure.
Okay. I would have liked to have heard, so I've obviously listened to this interview, the great interview. I would have liked to have heard maybe some moments in where you're like, oh, I messed this up. If Eddie was here, he would know how to do it. Or like, Eddie would have a good joke. I just felt like I wasn't as present in the interview as I think really maybe I could have been.
Wait, did you just want us to talk about you in the interview the whole time?
I mean, you could have brought me up once or twice, just a name drop, something, about my lack of presence. So just something for you to think about the next time you're doing a solo interview. Look, I'm just an ideas guy. I'm just throwing things out in there, so I just want you to take it and run with it if you want to.
Duly noted.
Okay. So you met, did the interview at FSBA. Can you just for a minute talk about what FSBA is and what was kind of controversial that came out of it?
So FSBA, it's a Florida School Board Association. Every single school board member who is a member in the state of Florida, so in all 67 counties, they can become a member of the School Board Association. And so usually at the conference, it's a time to go to different workshops and, they had about 1 million on AI. So you could go learn about, different topics. I introduced one that had to do with communicating budget realities with clarity, something that we all struggle with. But I think even more important really than those sessions is it's just an opportunity to be able to talk to other school board members across the state. As we've talked about before, Sunshine really prevents us from talking to any of our own school board members on our boards about issues that may come, for a vote before the board. But it's really nice to be able to talk to other members, just about issues and just to kind of catch up and see what their districts are doing and just kind of get different takes about what's going on. So
how hard are folks drinking at these events? Are you guys going to 3, 4 a.m.?
Oh my gosh, not this. I don't know. Maybe other people are, but by the end of the day, I am so tired. But I want to say one other important thing about this conference is it's where we vote on our legislative platform. Mm-hmm. And so that is important because when you think about school board races around the state, I think most people are hard pressed to even know who their school board member is, right?
I know who mine is.
Well, that's great. I am glad. But it's, in my previous advocacy life, Scott Hottenstein and I, we went around the state and we talked about this for months, but it's really that it really matters who's elected on other school boards in other counties because the Florida School Board Association is really the entity that has the sort of power or standing to really be advocating on behalf of all of the school districts. And so when you think about who's voting for that legislative platform, right, we all have an interest in ensuring that school board members in all of our counties are, knowledgeable, rational people who care about public education and, put that first in ensuring that it's properly funded so that all of our children can be served. So just a reminder that yes, support your school board candidate in your county, but also if you can, please support school board candidates in other counties too, good ones who are trying to do the right thing.
I love it. That was beautiful. Okay. I alluded to this, but what was kind of interesting, sorry, I keep leading because you were there, right? You're on the ground. This is on the ground reporting from Stephanie Vanos.
Yes. So actually Tampa Bay Times did a piece about this, but at the lunch on Thursday afternoon, we sat down to eat lunch and all of a sudden the Commissioner of Education was introduced and the
state of Florida.
For the state of Florida. And I guess all of the executive, members of FSBA knew, but none of the regular members knew. So it kind of came as a surprise. So I was, interested to see what he had to say. It was, and I mean, this is just a factual description. It was an aggressive speech where he was really pushing the Schools of Hope and telling us why it was the right thing to do in Florida. I would say in a not very compelling way, but it was I think that most of the people who heard that speech felt as though we were sitting at lunch and got yelled at for 10 minutes.
We could have that during our regular lunch if that's what you wanted.
We could do that at any lunch. No, but I think I was surprised, and I've watched the Board of Education meetings, and so everyone has a different style, and so I have seen his style before. But I do think I was surprised that in a room full of people, so this was superintendent, school board members, full of people who are just trying to do the right thing for our schools and our students and our families and communities and public education. That in that environment, maybe there would have been an attempt to, I don't know, just like
make peace,
like give an olive branch, like try to, hey, I know you're feeling this about Schools of Hope, but this is what we think. And maybe if we work together, maybe we do need to tweak this rule or this law. You're right. We weren't on the ground. We didn't really think about this, but I think if we work together, we can do X. And that was not at all what the speech was.
That's so weird because I feel like on the national level, the Trump administration is very much like, let's have an olive branch, let's make peace.
Am I an idealist? I don't know. Am I an optimist? I don't know. According to my race buddy, I am in fact an optimist. But
okay, race buddy, you did something kind of incredible yesterday, which I know you're going to downplay, but I don't think it should be downplayed. What'd you do yesterday?
I ran the Orlando Half Marathon.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
You're like so surprised. No, it was great. It was fun. I kind of decided maybe 2 months ago to run it, and my running partner at the very last minute decided she was going to run it too. And so I was so delighted to run it with her. I had so much fun. I don't know if she will admit that she had fun. We realized that I am an overly optimistic, positive runner, and she just enjoys kind of being in the grumpy runner mode while she's focused on the race. But but we make a great pair, and it was truly an honor to run with her. So it was really fun.
It was wonderful. I went out to see you near the beginning of the race because it was right down the corner. So it was exciting to see you run and cheer you on. But I made this mistake because I'm very much a novice at going to races. So I I'm trying to explain this in a way without trying to make the viewer totally visualize. But essentially I crossed the street to for no real reason to say hi to you, to wave to you. And by crossing the street, I actually put myself in a place where I could not cross back and go back home for 10 minutes. I had to wait for 10 minutes of streams of runners to go by before I could cross back and go back home. So I felt so dumb because it was this point where I didn't have to cross the street before the racers came, but I did for whatever reason. And then I was like, oh, I really messed that one up. But I was happy to support, the runners and most importantly, support you. And, I'm just so impressed by your ability to do that.
Oh, well, thank you for being out there. The spectators are so meaningful. If you have a race in your neighborhood, if it's a 5K, 10K, whatever, please go out and support the runners. First of all, your faith in humanity will be restored when you watch people run a long race, especially.
Okay, well, I don't know if my faith in humanity can be restored, but I appreciate where you're going.
Okay, see, running makes me extremely positive. So when I watch races, my faith in humanity is restored. It is so fun to cheer runners on. It is, I don't know.
No, that's beautiful.
I will just say thank you. All I just want to say is thank you to you, especially for coming out early. I know that you are a morning person, but yet it's still hard for you to operate in the morning. And everyone else who came out. I saw so many friends out there, and I'm just so appreciative of everyone who would take time out of their morning just to, watch some runners run by.
No, it was a beautiful thing, and I love seeing you in your element.
We have some big news this week. Work-wise.
Yes, we did. So I work at this company, M&R, been there for a couple years, and our union, I'm a member of the union at M&R, our union just signed a new contract with management, been negotiating for a number of months, and actually got new raises, increases in our 401k contributions, more paid parental leave, a few other cool things. But the thing, of course, I'm most excited about is our union won us a 36-hour work week. So I am going to be working 4 9-hour days. I'm going to live that 4-day work week life. I'm so excited. It's such a cool thing, and I feel like this is a thing that over the last few years, the 4-day work week has been talked about, and I know there are definitely companies who've piloted this. So this is not quite a 32-hour work week, which is what we, I think would be our goal. But, I think people should work less, enjoy their leisure time more. I'm excited to have my extra day. And just shouts to both the M&R union and union members across the country and organized labor. Like, truly, like, it's one thing to see it from afar or see people picketing or whatever, but to be in a union who you meaning me, like, for you to see what they were fighting for and for us to take actions. We did this action where everyone texted one of the members of the management's organizing committee. Like, every 15 minutes, we texted him demanding a fair contract. So we did a few like organizing moments and actions like that to put pressure on management. And, they stepped up and we signed a contract. But you really see like the power of organized labor and what it means to be in a union and how they fight for you and how they can win a better, working life for you. So I'm so grateful to our union, excited about the 36-hour work week, excited for more pay. I will take you out to dinner with my extra money. Where do you want to go?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have to think about that. Oh. But I just want to say, okay, first of all, I'm so impressed because when you first brought this up to me, I was like, there's no way that's going to happen. Yeah. So I am just so impressed, the power of the people. But do you think, real question here. Yeah. Do you think that having a 36-hour work week, so shortened work week by 4 hours, do you think it will enhance your ability to do your job? Like, do you think you'll do your job better because you have like more rest, or you have the ability to sort of like explore your hobbies or have more leisure time, or like, just curious?
Well, I don't know. We'll see how that turns out. I think I will be able to do my job as well as I've always done it. But I mean, I think what I'm really excited about is to spend more time working on creative pursuits and more time to edit the podcast and, more time to live my life that's not my work, even though I am grateful for, the protections and the workplace that I have through the union and through my company. My life is not my work. So I'm excited to do less of it and spend more of it like with the people I care about and doing the pursuits that I care about that are not work related.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
Well, thank you.
And I think it will, I think it will probably help to retain employees too.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a huge thing. I mean, if you're a company that has like these sort of great benefits, it's a great way to retain employees and attract new employees. So, it was super exciting. And, I'm looking forward to the back paycheck that I think should be coming soon.
That's going to be so nice.
I know.
But we have, one other thing before we go. Very exciting, very big news for you.
Wait, what?
You are leading.
Oh my God.
Your ice hockey league in points this season. So when you have more time to spend on the ice, I can't even imagine what's going to happen. They're very impressive.
Oh, okay. Just to be clear, I play in a beer league, 35 plus D league, D meaning, A, B, C, D. So I am in like the lowest league of people who like know how to skate. It's not quite a beginner league, but it's for people who like, I never played like high school or, college, any sort of professional hockey, but it's a lot of fun. But there's only 4 teams. So yes, I am tied for first with 8 points. 6 assists and 2 goals. Not that anyone's counting.
That's amazing.
Well, let's not say amazing. I think it's more of a like, good for you.
No, I think it's great. And hey, you can only compete against the people who are out there. So you know what? If you're not out there trying to play ice hockey and doing a great job, then you can only compete against people who are there. So I think it's impressive. I think you should feel really good about it.
Oh, thank you.
And I can't wait to see where you go now that you have more time on the ice.
Well, I'm trying to heal 10-year-old, 11-year-old Eddie, who tried out for the travel hockey team and was never quite good enough. So I think I still have that scar within me, and I'm consistently trying to heal that scar, which is maybe why I tried to become an actor in Los Angeles, ran for office, started a podcast. It's all because I never made travel hockey team. I've never been able to quite fix that pain inside of me.
What's it going to take, Eddie? What's it going to take?
Once I hit number one alone, and I'm not sharing number one in the men's D League.
You'll be healed?
I will be healed.
That's awesome.
Well, speaking of being healed, let's heal our listeners with our interview with school board member Jessica Vaughn. It's a good one. Please enjoy.
Welcome to the podcast, school board member from Hillsborough County, Jessica Vaughn. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm usually on the other side, so it's really cool to be on this side for a change.
And I feel like, you were early in the podcast game. How long have you been doing your podcast?
We started, I want to say, in 2018, but I've taken a break because it's hard to, I don't know how you do it. It's hard to do school board responsibilities and have a podcast. So we haven't done an episode in about a year, but it's the best way to reach people these days. People can throw it on in the car. They can pick up the kids. It's so good. So I'm so excited you guys are doing this.
Oh, well, thank you. And just for listeners who might want to go back, what is the name of your podcast?
It's called Reclaiming My Mind.
Oh, I like that. Have you reclaimed your mind?
No, not in Florida, not in MAGA Central, trying to fight for public education. I lose it more every day.
I was going to say, has being a school board member helped you reclaim your mind? I would say probably not. No. Okay. Well, that's okay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Same. I just wanted to start off, a couple of weeks ago, we had another school board member from another county on here, Rebecca Thompson, and she made a bold statement. So we're going to start with this.
Okay.
She said that we live in a state that wants public education to fail.
100% for decades. The plan has been engineered since No Child Left Behind. Because they want to privatize it, right? Mm-hmm. Everything that you could possibly make money off of, the postal service, anything that's a public service, they want to privatize. So for decades, this plan has been in motion. And I don't think it's unfair to say that Florida is the most aggressive in privatizing education right now.
Why do you think that is?
Because there's money to be made off it, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's a very good documentary called Backpacks Full of Cash, where they just see students as cash cows. Mm-hmm. And, if they can find a way to basically have almost no overhead, charter schools or private companies. And we see it now with these vouchers, right? These universal vouchers. I mean, I think even yesterday I was reading a story about a school that was 150 miles out of a county taking a voucher. So it's just all about privatizing so that people can profit off our students' backs.
Yeah. And I think when you have that as your incentive, it sort of takes really the whole goal of education away, right? Because we put students first in public schools. And when that's not the goal, when the goal is instead to put money first, that really impacts our kids and it impacts the decisions, that affect their families too. What are you seeing in Hillsborough County that, how are you seeing the impacts of sort of the taxpayer funded voucher program? So let's start there. How, what impacts are you seeing from the taxpayer funded voucher program in Hillsborough County?
So our state leadership always loves to point out that Hillsborough has one of the highest homeschool populations. And so that's an issue because, especially for me, I'm not against homeschool. I have some friends who are very successful in homeschool and have for years. But from what I'm seeing, a lot of people are not equipped to homeschool their children, right? Mm-hmm. They might be two families that work, both parents work. That's really challenging. Many people don't have an educational background. They kind of go to these homeschool companies. They buy this pre-made curriculum that a lot of time might reflect their faith or whatever, for whatever reason they don't feel comfortable putting their kids in public school, but the goal isn't academics. Mm-hmm. And so I see a lot of people struggling and maybe think they're being successful in homeschool, but if those kids were even to come take the basic standardized testing, they would not test well. So I worry about the quality of education coming out of our young people. But of course, when we have less students, the ramifications are what we're seeing in every county. We're seeing less enrollment. And with less enrollment, you have to make hard choices because you either have to cut units, which is how we refer to teachers, which is a horrible way to refer to people as units. But and that means more crowded classrooms, less adults on campus to be responsible, the thing that drive people away from public education, or we have to close schools, right? Mm-hmm. And then that's even more tricky because you take kids out of their neighborhood. And a lot of our kids, we're one of the poorest districts, student rich property poor. 40% of our kids, 40% of our students live below the poverty line.
Oh, wow.
And so when you take closed neighborhood schools, kids can't get back for the sports. They can't get back for the extracurricular. They can't get back for tutoring. That bus ride to and from school is the only way that they get there. So it has so many ramifications that, we see it right now, but I think that the detriment that it's going to do to education and to our kids is going to be felt for decades. Even if we were to turn it around right now, the damage is already prevalent.
Yeah. Have you had to close schools? Or are you talking about rezoning and consolidation in Hillsborough?
We did. We closed schools last or 2 years ago.
Okay.
It was a big deal. And yeah, we're still looking at that because, it's true. If you have a school that has 100 kids in it, it's hard to justify having a principal, an AP, janitorial staff, especially when there's shortages in other schools, it's hard to justify keeping that open. And so business-wise, which that's the other thing, right? Once you start to think about it as a business and profits are the main thing, you start looking at it, as you mentioned, from profit-driven perspectives or how are we going to operate things, and you can't make the best decisions of what's right for our kids. So we might have to close schools and send kids even further away. And then, then there's transportation, which is our biggest unfunded mandate. We don't get enough for transportation, so we're shipping our kids on buses further away. They have to wake up earlier. They have less time with their family. I mean, it's a domino effect, and it causes people who really want to be dedicated to public school to pull their kids out, right? I mean, it's like not only do they want to privatize it, but they want to also make it so that public school is only really left over for a subset of kids that, one, are going to be great to funnel into the military, two, school to prison pipeline, or three, they want to make these career, these tech job or these trade skill jobs, but they're not trying to get them into the union where they're going to have high wages and access to medical benefits. They want to make like construction workers who are going to work for ABC Consulting and, make minimum wage and get laid off when there's no work. So I really worry that public schools are either going to be left to indoctrinate kids into being extremely religious and only have one view of history and then funnel them off to all these other areas as a pipeline.
Right. And I think in this other schools that are left, some charter schools and voucher schools, I mean, there's really no evidence that those schools are any better academically and oftentimes perform worse academically than public schools. So it's not as though you're creating this, this like leveled up education. It's actually, really diluting the education of our students.
It is, because a lot of times, and not for all charter schools, I've seen this in Hillsborough, and I don't know if you have the same thing in Orange, but we kind of have our mom and pop charter schools that are really created by people who saw a gap in the education system. They're very passionate about it. They create charter schools. And I support those charter schools. And a lot of times they're very eager to work with the school district and talk about best practices. And I feel like there's a real relationship. But then you have these for-profit charter schools. And that's where you see the biggest academic slides, right? Because we have a lot of kids that what happens is, because there's a count that happens in the first 20 days, right? And that's where the funding comes from. Charter schools in Hillsborough will draw all these kids in. They'll have fancy new buildings and they'll have computer, laptop. They'll have all this advertising. They pull families in. They get the money for the first count, and then they weed out the kids who need extra support or ESE or have 504 plans or who are behavior problems in their mind. They slowly push those kids out. So we have a lot of kids that come back to our public schools, and half the time once they've been in a lot of these charter schools, they're so far behind academically that it's almost impossible to catch them up, especially if we have 35 kids in an elementary classroom. It's hard for a teacher to not only differentiate between the kids who have been in your class and in public schools, but then go back and put those remedial skills into the kids that have lost so much by being in the charter schools. So again, it's like every decision is engineered to slowly chip away at public education until it's not sustainable for a majority of our kids.
Yeah. And I want to double back on something that you said. I refer to, we have some homegrown charters. There are charters that I would say are serving an unmet need that the public school is, it needs help with and is not serving well. And so the charter schools pop up. They're sort of, mom and pop, kind of homegrown. And I think that they can have a good place within our public school system. But I think it's really these sort of like franchise type charters that come in. And, the access to funding that they have. We just had a charter application recently come through a work session of ours, and the access to money that they have from their manager, which is, of course, a for-profit entity. Even if the charter school itself is nonprofit, the money is all going to these other groups. So I'm curious, do you know, and you may not know, but do you know how many charter schools are in Hillsborough County?
I know it's a quarter. And we have about 200. So I want to say there's probably 30 to 50 charter schools. Some closed, some open. We have 2 coming forward, like you said, on this next agenda applications. And then some consolidate. We have a lot that start off as one, and either they join with another and they become a K-8, or we have some that close and then just change their name and reopen. And aside from, the extra money they might get from their managerial company or however they set up their funding, they also get extra PICO and capital outlay dollars that public education doesn't get.
Yep. And they also have access to grants that are specific for charter schools. And those are both at the federal level and the state level. And they also there's the state revolving loan for startup charter schools. I think they allocate $100 million to that.
I did not know that.
So their access to funds is honestly, it does not even compare to traditional schools. Which kind of brings me now to Schools of Hope, the special charter schools that have become Hope operators and can operate rent-free in our public schools that
Schools
are...
of Nope.
Schools of... See, I love it. This is going to be a good one. How are you feeling about that in your district right now?
Well, I'm really surprised. There is so much negative feedback from that. And you think it would kind of fall down party lines generally, because a lot of this privatization, unfortunately, it seems like the Republican Party is pro-privatization, and for the most part, the Democratic Party is pro-public schools, depending on what part of Florida you're in. Let's be honest about that. South Florida, you need to catch up. But even the Republicans in my district are outraged by this, because what I have found, and I don't know if it's the same way in Orange, I represent more of a suburban district. My district was originally Democratic heavy when I ran, but then we redistrict and it's more Republican heavy now. And I won just re-election in 2024 with a Republican majority. And the Republicans, I know, they want good public schools. They want to move into a safe neighborhood, a gated neighborhood. They want to send their kids to the schools down the street. They want their public schools to be funded. They don't want to jump through lotteries to get into a charter school or have to worry about carpooling and co-parenting. They support traditional public education. And the thought of any school of hope of kids that they don't know, right, who could be any age, who, let's just be honest, right? They're more brown and black kids, and they usually live below the poverty line. When you have people who live in nice suburban areas that have the idea that there could be on an elementary campus, grown or high school kids that, come from very tough neighborhoods, it freaks Republicans out. They don't want the school that they put their resources in for anybody to be able to come into. So it's a nonpartisan issue. There's no one in Hillsborough County that I have talked to in person that sees the value of this, who thinks it's going to help marginalized communities, who think it's going to help kids. Most people see it for what it is, right? It's a land grab, it's a school grab, it's a money grab. So overwhelmingly, it is not popular. What about in Orange? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. And again, I'm going to go back to, I think when it comes to having strong public schools, I feel like it is just as much Democratic as it is Republican. I don't think it is a red and blue issue. I think the vast majority of people who are going to public schools, understand the dangers. They understand, they see what's happening to the public school system. And I think that they are not okay with exactly what you said. These charters kind of coming in, taking up space, sharing fields, sharing cafeterias, sharing auditoriums, again, different ages, different discipline, different code of conduct. Are they even the same start and dismissal times? We don't know. I don't think, and I think just coming in rent free, and then not only coming in rent free, but then the school has to pay for all these other services. It's not it's not fiscally responsible. That's for sure.
No.
So I think, again, I have seen the same thing that you have.
That's the disconnect that I don't understand, is how we get to a place where, regardless of what you think about education, that it's okay for our public tax dollars to go to educational systems where there's no transparency, no accountability. You don't know. I mean, I bring this up all the time, but in Ohio, they did a big, news story where there was 2,000 kids in a Nazi homeschool co-op that was using Nazi curriculum, right? It's uncovered. You can Google it. If that had been in Florida, our public tax dollars could have been funding that. My tax dollars could have been going to teach children to be Nazis. That's just mind-blowing to me. So I feel like no matter where you stand, we should all, as Americans, agree that public tax dollars should be public, they should be accountable, and they should be transparent. Who knows what's happening in these private schools, these charter schools, or homeschools?
Right.
So I just don't understand how anybody can get behind this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have asked several times, I'm sort of pushing this, if you're getting public tax dollars, you should be subject to the Florida Sunshine Laws, which means you should be subject to open records and open meetings, so that we can see. The public deserves to see where its money is going. And I was listening to one of the candidates for governor, Paul Renner. He was at Tiger Bay a couple of weeks ago in Orlando, and he was actually the person who kind of pushed HB1 through, which is the universal voucher bill. And so he spent a lot of his speech at Tiger Bay talking about how much he cared about accountability and transparency. And so I asked him, I said, I really appreciate what you have to say about accountability and transparency. How will you be applying that to the universal, voucher, taxpayer funded voucher system? And would you agree that these schools at a minimum should be subject to sunshine laws? And he said, well, I can't agree to that because, private entities, they shouldn't be regulated by the government.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so when you said earlier, there was something that you said, and I wanted to follow up to say, if you follow most of our legislators, or a lot, not most, who are pushing privatization, you also find that their wives or them themselves or somewhere have stock and financial interest in these charter school companies or school privatization. So, the corruption, when it comes to school privatization is an easy trail to follow.
Yep. I mean, in fact, there's another candidate for governor.
There is.
Who has a wife who is very entrenched in the charter school system and charter school industry.
Sounds like she's closing charter schools on people with no notice, and the people who chose her charter schools are hurting educationally right now.
Yep. Leaving parents up a creek for sure.
Yeah. And I think, like in Hillsborough, I don't know if you guys have come to this, but the irony is full circle that we had a bunch of schools that we closed 2 years ago. They're in a predominantly African-American neighborhood. Both schools, we have a very strong history in Hillsborough County of our Black community being very strong pioneers and activists in education. And a lot of our schools are named after Black pioneers in education. And so we had these schools that we closed, and our Black community, which obviously isn't monolithic, but all came together and were outraged by this and wanted the schools to remain open and, be beacons and speak to the history of our urban core. And we closed these schools, and the superintendent came up with a plan to reopen them and reinvest in them and turn them into these amazing schools. They're going to have performing arts, they're going to have STEM, and reopen these schools. And the Republican on our board didn't vote for it because they're worried that any new school that we open isn't going to have full enrollment, and it's going to make it an opportunity for these schools of hope that are supposed to uplift and help our marginalized communities come in and take over. And I said, it's so ironic that the schools of hope are supposed to be going into our marginalized communities and reshaping education. That's why they're called schools of hope, for these communities that have been neglected when it comes to education for so long. And here we are about to reinvest in those communities and build these beautiful schools. And we're afraid to open them because under the guise of helping marginalized communities, it's really become this, land grab, pro-profit, group that's coming in that's actually hurting our marginalized communities. So it's become full circle that our schools of hope are stopping us from building real schools of hope. I mean, it's not stopping us because it passed, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But still, the irony.
Right. Well, and I'm sure it's a concern. I'm sure even voting for it, you're concerned in your
100%.
mind of like, oh gosh, well, if this isn't full, we
100%.
could have another school in here. And also with these schools of hope, I mean, we've talked about this before, but their grades, I mean, the average student grade is a C. I don't know about you. We had nothing below a C in Orange County. We were all A, B, and C schools. So for these schools to come in and do the same or worse, like just literally makes no sense.
So you were A, B, and C's, but there's legislation that goes through to regrade our schools, and I bet you'll have a lot of C or D schools then, because then it justifies this, right?
So tell me more about that.
I don't know the details of it as much. They tried to pass it last year. They didn't.
Was it Valdez's bill?
It was Valdez. I wasn't going to bring up any names, but yes.
Well, I mean, she put it out there, so I feel
It was Susan Valdez's. It didn't pass, but I believe it's been re-entered again this year, or pieces of it, and it's going to regrade all of our schools, and we will have C's and D's then. And then that will open up where these schools of hopes can be, right? Because supposedly they're only supposed to be in a certain area within another failing school, which they're not doing right now, right? The applications that we got don't meet those guidelines. And I think that's the other piece of it that's concerning, is whether or not you support this, the fact that there's no answers around what it's going to look like when you're talking about integrating, and as you've mentioned, all the details that go around school. What happens if a school's shooting, God forbid, or safety, or a fire? Like, there's so many unanswered questions about responsibilities or what that looks like. Or, as you know, neighborhoods change.
Yeah.
And so maybe you have open seats now, but maybe in 3 years, they're going to build a community there, and you're going to have a need for schools because families are going to come in. Well, guess what? They're not going to revoke those seats from the schools of hope, right? They can just take more and more and more. So you're going to have to build another school because schools of hope have taken over your schools. And the amount of money that it costs to build a school these days in comparison to 20 years ago.
With less funding for capital.
Less funding every year, right? I mean, from what, I don't know if you've gone to Tallahassee this year or not.
Earlier this year, but yeah.
So what we got told at all of our meetings is that the goal this session, aside from maybe cutting property taxes, which is the infrastructure of our communities, they also want to cut the entire budget by 5%. That's the goal. Every single committee, every single department, which is confusing because didn't they have an overage? Last legislative session?
I thought so. For the last couple of years,
they've had an overage, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's been funneled into DeSantis's private army and if we don't have that anymore. But
is it with the hope? Yeah.
Hope. Yet again, we see hope is a common theme here, isn't it? A lot of hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I think the lack of questions and answers and accountability is almost as frightening as what's happening itself, because what happens if your community grows and changes? You can't just give away your empty seats.
Right.
Like, that's poor planning.
Right.
That's not growth management. Like, who's making these decisions?
Right. And I mean, I've said this too, just the bill is just so poorly written. I mean, not every term is defined. They don't, they use words that we don't really know what they mean. And so, I don't know. I don't know. Well, I know what they were thinking when they filed it, but I think that we should also use that vagueness to our advantage too. And it's materially impractical for these schools to operate, then there's no definition for that either. So that was our answer for many of the notices that we received.
And I don't know if you have this challenge, but I think people don't understand where this is coming from, right? I mean, because they have school boards, they think that every educational decision is made by us. So we've actually gotten letters from our community that's like, don't do these schools of hope. And it's like, then you have to respond to people and tell them to contact their legislators. Like, people don't understand who's making these decisions. Yeah. And you're going to have people who are running for re-election that large part of the community doesn't even understand. Like, these people voted for schools of hope. They're ruining public education. So I encourage people, I say this over and over again, if you care about public education, we need to make public education single issue voters, like abortion or guns or anything else.
Yes.
And you should be asking every candidate, from soil and water up to, if you have a chance to talk to a gubernatorial candidate, where do you stand on supporting public schools? Where do you stand on these schools of hope? Like, we need to start asking, because people who are making the decisions like this, they're not your school board members, right? They're your governor, they're your legislator. And so we need to start having a bigger conversation about education for every single candidate and start holding these candidates accountable for their education decisions.
Yes, I so agree. And they so clearly not been in schools or spent any time recently in a classroom. I do have a question for you related to that. So you teased out a couple of months ago that you were possibly thinking about running for governor. Are you still thinking about that?
I'm not.
Okay.
Now, I would run for governor if they were going to remove me. Right? Because my number one priority, I ran for re-election in my district. I'm passionate about education. My number one priority is my district. But if you're going to put me in a position where you're going to remove my autonomy to represent my district and threaten to remove me because, you know, I'm not taking books out of the library that my community wants to keep, or whatever, you know, whim that the Board of Education of a bunch of appointed people who lost their school board elections who are now making decisions, or our appointed attorney general, just because they make threats. So if you're going to remove me from my position, I'll definitely find another position to run for. And if governor gives me the platform to talk about the things that I want to, I'll always take advantage of that. But if I can stay in my seat and continue to serve my community on what I ran for, that's always going to be my first priority. So they haven't removed me yet. They might wait until, you know, a week before the election, so I don't have much momentum, but I'm not planning.
Right. So I'll just go on this. What have you thought about the current candidates for governor, their thoughts on education? Have you had a chance to get to know them or talk to them about education, and what are you thinking?
So I've only had an opportunity to talk to David Jolly, because Deming's just kind of announced. I haven't really had a chance, and the Republican candidates aren't eager to take my calls. But I would love to speak to any of them. I mean, we know Byron, right? His wife is in the news for charter schools. So I think he's been very clear about where he stands. He used to be just charter school, but now he says he's open to the whole voucher system, and he just supports school choice. And then, so you said one of them, it brought forward HB.
Right.
So we know where they stand. Jolly, I think, is supportive of public education. I think a lot of the Democrats are in a position where they realize school choice is, that ship has sailed, and we're not going to go back from that. So I think the prevalent concept is accountability, and what does that look like, and kind of stopping this bleed of making it seem like it's school choice, but giving all the advantage to private companies or homeschools, and, you know, taking so much away from public schools to where most people are starting to be hesitant, even though, let's be clear and let's be honest, because we want to be honest about this. We heard it today. Public school is the choice of almost 85% of people in Florida. Yep. It's the best place for a majority of our kids, almost most of our kids. They're going to have the most access to, you know, educated people who understand education philosophy. I mean, I'm a certified teacher. I know what I have to do.
Well, you're overqualified for many charter schools and voucher schools then. So
exactly. And the training I have to take to keep my certification, and the ESE, and understanding how, it's the best place. So I want to be clear that even with all this propaganda, I choose public education for my child, right? I keep him in public schools. I'm a huge supporter. So I don't want people to hear this and be like, oh no, public education is the worst. I've got to pull my kid out, because it's still the best place. So I think that they understand that, you know, it's sailed, but they want accountability for it. What I will say that I think is great is Jolly is he does have a realistic plan for paying teachers, like a sliding scale of paying our teachers so much per year, and I can't remember what it was. So we actually get into like a ballpark of where we're not the lowest out of 50 states in teacher pay. He understands that to, you know, keep our kids educated, we need to be recruiting people. And the truth is, educators can't live on what we're paying them. It's not a livable wage. It's not. I have friends, all my friends are educators, and most of them have multiple jobs, whether it's proctoring SATs on the weekend. They're working 6 or 7 days a week, and they're not avid spenders. They're not taking big vacations. They're just trying to pay their bills. And so I do like that he is identifying a realistic plan about paying our educators what they're worth. Probably not what they're worth, but trying to pay them a livable wage.
Right.
But that's as far as I've gotten. What about you? What are you thinking about, Governor? What are you hearing education-wise?
Well, as you said, I think Demings has kind of just come out, but I have already offered many times to have a conversation with him about kind of how he views education, and just sort of, you know, give the perspective of someone on a school board. And I would hope that anyone running for governor would be reaching out to school board members across the state to really understand what is happening. Because I think you hear one thing from lawmakers and you hear another thing from people who are like representing, students and parents and teachers and educators and administrators and all of that. So I hope that they do reach out. I heard David Jolly speak, and I wish he had a stronger stance on the taxpayer-funded voucher program. So that to me was a little disappointing. But I had not heard what he had said about teacher pay, and I think that is also crucial because there are so many pieces to making public education work, and we cannot recruit and retain the best teachers if we are not paying them a better, at least, a better salary.
100%.
So that is important.
And it's funny because I've seen him speak a couple times in different audiences. And every time he talks about public education, he gets the loudest applause. And the fact that the Democratic Party has been so weak on public education for so many decades when it's a winning issue, it leads me to believe it's because a lot of candidates or people leading our party have sold off to school privatization decades ago. You hear very little about supporting. Even during the book bans, I reached out to the Democratic Party and was like, support us. People are not for banning books. They understand, especially you want to talk about anti-socialist people who come here from Cuba. You start banning books and they realize this is dictatorship. This is authoritarianism. I mean, I had priests and religious people say in our religious school, we were encouraged to read whatever and talk about it,
Right.
And so I reached out to the Democratic Party. This is a winning issue, stand up for book banning, literacy freedom. This is authoritarianism. They would not support us. They would not touch it, And so I don't understand why the Democratic Party refuses. If we really became the party of public education, what a winning issue it would be. But for whatever reason, the leaders and a lot of candidates back away from it.
I don't get that. I mean, I think you're right. Public education does cross lines. And I think the things that are tangentially involved or more directly involved, like the First Amendment rights, our United States Constitution, for example, I mean, that is directly implicated with so many of the decisions being made right now. And if you're someone, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, that should bother you. That should bother you that people are being bullied, that First Amendment rights are being trampled, because right now, your favored party may be in power, but that's not always the case. And, regardless, we should all care about that. That's just an overarching, American value.
100%. And not just your First Amendment rights, but the whole concept of democracy, representative democracy, is when you and I are elected to represent people when it comes to that. And when they're overreaching and taking that authority away from us and away from the majority of what our district wants, they're eroding democracy. That is authoritarianism. They're taking duly elected people who run for election. We say our platform, we say what we stand for, and overriding our decisions to our community. And that's the antithesis to democracy. So there's so many warning signs about just the approach to education, the heavy-handedness, and what it looks like, and the complete hypocrisy of 3 years ago, it was get indoctrination out of our schools. And everything that we see from the Phoenix Proclamation to the new standards tied around social studies, which I know you said you have already covered on your podcast, is so white supremacist, Judeo-Christian view that it's literally other states are saying this is indoctrination. And so it's this constant hypocrisy that I don't understand how, no one from, it's not being called out. People are just digesting it.
Well, I think there's so much to call out, but there's also so much going on. I think it's all on purpose. But I will say there was a member of the Board of Education who wrote a piece for the Miami Herald a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about the anti-communism standards that they had just passed and how important they were, and how communism is so terrible, and goes through this whole thing, and then she ends with saying that she's so proud of the Board of Education for removing ideology from schools. It's like, just so you know, anti-communism actually is an ideology, as is capitalism. Like, these things are all ideologies. So I'm not sure that she fully understood what she was saying?
Well, I watched the board and they used the word socialism and communism interchangeably. And I actually said that from the dais, like, that's concerning to me if you're making decisions about education and you don't understand that there's a difference in that. And okay, you don't like communism, but what's even scarier is authoritarianism, because most of what people associate with socialism or communism is dictators who have risen out of that, right? Who have kind of done these populist revolutions and they implement communism and socialism and they're going to share it with everybody, and they really take advantage of that. I mean, you see that in Cuba, you see that all over in South America. And so it's like, why can't we talk about anti-authoritarianism, which is a direct, a direct threat to democracy? Why aren't we talking about fascism, which honestly, fascism scares me way more, than a lot of the other. So but the fact that we have board members who don't understand a Board of Education, because have you looked at their credentials, by the way, at the Board of Education?
Oh, yeah.
There's only one person on there that even has an education background. All the other people have zero education background. And so that kind of circles back to governor is, while I would love a strong candidate who's a hardcore Democrat to come out strong on public education, I think that flipping the seat of governor is so crucial in Florida if you're an education advocate, because at the very least, what we should have on our Board of Education and our commissioner is not some chief of staff, ultra conservative, or is that that's the attorney general, but whomever he was, we shouldn't have a lackey of whoever the governor is. We should have people who care about education, who have experience with education. Those are the people who should be making the decisions, regardless of what their partisanship is. At the very least, you should understand the entity that you're making rules and decisions about. And so for me, getting a governor who at the very least will prioritize putting experienced people in the positions to make these decisions about our community is the most important thing. So while in the primaries, I'll probably vet governor very, very closely. And I am a hardcore progressive who's not like vote blue no matter who. I'm like, vote for the best candidate. I will support whoever is our Democratic governor wholeheartedly and probably work for them, because I know what's at stake. And I think another 4 years of a ultra conservative governor is going to be the end to traditional public education here in Florida.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Before we go, I want to ask if you could put together a plan for a public education system that you think would be successful and truly help students. What are, let's say, the top 3 to 5 things, 3 to 5 things that this is what I want public education to look like, or these are the 3 things to 5 things that I would want to change. What things come to mind?
Well, I don't know if I can engineer it that quickly, but I think the number one thing is equal access to early education. And I think part of the problem of what we see is there's so little accountability when it comes to private daycare providers or early education, that as myself, who's been a kindergarten teacher, you have kids that come in so many different levels, and you see over and over again the key to being successful in reading and being academic is that early exposure to quality early access to education. So early education, I think making sure that we have full days for VPK and even 3-year-olds to have free access to quality education would be a game changer in reading readiness and what that looks like. One of the other things I think that a lot of upper high school and middle school teachers disagree, but we don't retain until 3rd grade. And if you are not able to read by the time you get to 3rd grade and you don't have those fundamental skills, trying to catch up in 4th and 5th grade is just almost impossible. It really is. If you're trying to figure out how to read all the content that you're supposed to be learning in 4th and 5th grade, you're never going to get to. I think if you don't have those fundamental skills to get out of kindergarten and 1st grade, you should not just automatically go on. Now, if you're a high school teacher, a principal or teacher, you worry about that because you might have 18, 19-year-old kids in high school because they weren't able to get the skills that they need. So it's kind of controversial, but I think all that energy and focus has got to go in making sure that our kids in kindergarten and 1st grade are prepared for what's coming next. And then obviously, I think just making sure that we have more support system for our ESE kids, and because more and more kids are, being diagnosed on the spectrum, and you have to really understand understand the learning needs of each student. And when you only have one teacher in a classroom with 35 kids, even if they're ESE, even if they have 14 different 504s that they have to differentiate between and sit this kid in the front, sit that. So the people who are qualified to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our kids, I think is really important. I think that we see a large group of our ESE kids leaving us because even though we're probably better than most other places because we actually train our teachers and we have 504 plans and it's hard if you're one person trying to implement a classroom of 32 kids, all of those needs. So I think making sure that we are funding, we're paying for it, we're paying for our teachers, we're putting the right people in the right places, and we're focusing on early education would have a huge impact. What about you?
You could throw it right back at me. I mean, I would say, first of all, I think so much of the research does show to having strong pre-K systems. I mean, that makes can have the biggest impact. And it can also help families when you have that full day education. It helps parents be able to go back to work and not have to pay for childcare, which is so expensive, where they might not really be getting any pre-kindergarten skills or really anything.
Sitting on some old playground furniture.
Right, exactly. And I think number two is just making sure, I would just say like teacher salaries just generally, because again, I don't think we can recruit and retain the best if we are not paying them at least more of what they're worth. So I think that's huge. And then I think what you say about ESE, I think is so true. I think our ELL, to make sure that those students too, they're able to take a test in their native language, because I feel like they need an opportunity to show what they actually know. 100%. And we are just, I mean, what a gift that we have students who will be able to speak multiple languages. I know. I mean, what a gift that is. That's not a, I don't like a ding in any way. That's a gift. And I don't think we do a great job of that. And so I'm hoping that is a bill that goes to the legislature again this year. And I think just generally funding to make sure our kids have the supports that they need, whether it's, in mental health support. Maybe it's just a social worker making sure they have food, because hungry kids aren't learning. Additionally, community partnership schools, I'm a big supporter of that too.
100%, yeah. And I do want to say that while we talk about teacher pay, we have to talk about all our employees, right? You're right. Because it's like the cafeteria person. Yeah. I have some kids that go to school because they love their cafeteria person, and they love that. It's all the adults on campus that are put together that heavy lift. We need to make sure our bus drivers, our janitorial. If you have a dirty school, you can't learn it. Yeah. So it's like our employees in general. And, even though we focus on teacher pay, anybody who is sacrificing their life for education deserves a livable wage. So
I think 100%. About paras, especially paras in the ESE rooms, especially. I mean, what they do, that's
for sure. Yeah. Well, this has been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it. And it was great to catch up with you.
You too. Thanks again.
Jessica.
Thanks for listening. And remember, vet every single person running for election about public education. And if you care about it, only vote for the people who are going to support public education.
I love it. Hear, hear.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.